Hi y'all, it's Neva from Manic Mama Musings, and it is Mental Health Mondays. Um, Sorry, my hair's a little fuzzy. We are getting lots of moisture here, lots of rain, and I don't have curly hair, but I have wavy hair, and it gets real frizzy when it's raining outside. Um, I actually slept last night, and I was still tired and took a nap today. I don't know if it was the rain or my body catching up. I'm kind of achy because of the rain, but I'm not. That's not. Okay, my light's doing a little thing, so forgive me. Um, if it looks like, you know, something from a haunted movie, well, it might be. It might be a ghost giving me a sign. Not sure. So today's Mental Health Monday. Let's get that over with. I mean, not over with, but let's get to talking about it so I don't get distracted. But it's raining, and I don't know about you guys. It puts me in a chill mood. I so think I need to live somewhere where it rains almost every day and just stays overcast. Especially consider I'm allergic to the sun, you know. But I love days like this. I, most people want to go for a cruise on a sunny day. No, I want to go for a cruise on a rainy day. And if you don't know anything about New Mexico, we don't get rain like this. This is the second or third day of rain. It gets started like night before last, I think. Anyway, we're under a flash flood warning. The flash flood, not because it's coming down so hard, but because we are not geared for a big amount of rain. Like we don't have the drainage like places that get lots of rain because we don't. I mean, like we're getting it now, but this is unusual. Anyway, I'm not going to complain about it. I'm happy because my garden is very happy. I'm glad I did my garden update yesterday evening because when it had quit raining, because it rained most of yesterday, like off and on. It has rained slow and steady all day today. And like I said, I'm not complaining. My garden's happy. It makes me happy. My sinuses are not happy, but that's because it doesn't know what to do because, in a week it'll be 103 and super dry. So my sinuses are just like, we don't get it. What's going on here? But so I have sinus problems all the time. So that's not yeah. So rain makes me happy. We've now established that. I did my counseling today and then took a nap. And we really didn't talk about a lot. I kind of had a bad stomach, so when I'm not feeling good physically, it kind of affects how much I can share with him. Because if I'm feeling gross, really, I just thinking about I don't feel good and I want to go to bed. That's just the truth. So, but therapy, talking about it is part of I want to lead into that because that's kind of what I want to talk about today. I was diagnosed bipolar. That was the only thing I was diagnosed at that time with bipolar in 95. I think it was 95. No, it was not 95, y'all. It was 2000. No, it was 95. Okay, I was diagnosed bipolar in 95. And at the time where I lived, there was like group therapy, but it was our case manager. She also had a degree, and she would do that part for free because none of us had money. I didn't have insurance at the time and whatnot. I was working, but I was barely making it. And so a group of us would get together and do a group therapy. And, we kind of do crafts together sometimes and stuff like that. At that time, they had put me on, I think, Depakote. It didn't help. They upped it to the max dose, and then I had tremors, and it still wasn't helping. So they took me off of that and put me on lithium. Lithium made me feel yucky. And at the time, I was enjoying my manic episodes because I didn't have kids. I was single. And so when I left where I was living, came back here to Clovis, um, I quit my meds so that I could party because I knew that I couldn't be on lithium and drink. And I wanted to party with my friends, just be honest. I didn't have any kids, I didn't have any worries as far as other than myself. And then I went a long time. unmedicated. Like but I made a lot of stupid decisions in that time too. And then I got pregnant with my daughter and I had to move back home with my parents because I had lost my job. Okay. And so um, I I spent the pregnancy helping take care of my dad because my mom was babysitting my nephew out of town. So she would go to watch him and I'd be home with my dad who was very sick and had been told that he was dying of congestive heart failure. And so I was home with him. So I was still useful. I, for a long time, I was like, you just used your parents in a terrible moment. But my mom told me before she died, she was glad that I was home with my dad when she couldn't be. So it made me feel better. Even if she didn't mean it, telling me that made me feel a little better. And I did get time with my dad that I had never had before. I'm still not brave enough. I never did get brave enough to ask him some questions and say things I needed to say. But, well, then, because it took so long for my dad's Social Security to kick in, the bank was not willing to work with him to wait on. He was willing to pay them double what he owed them on the house, back through his back pay, but they weren't willing to wait. And so they were going to foreclose on him. And my dad by then had realized how minded and racist the town was. Me being pregnant with Rihanna, and after Rihanna was born, the things they said. And so he was happy to move here to Clovis, closer to doctors, even though he did not have any plans on seeing one much because, he's going to see his regular doctor just to get med adjustments because he was dying. There was not anything, they couldn't do surgery on his heart, and anything else that came about, there was no sense in trying to fix. You get the idea. Let's not get too depressing. So after I had my first daughter, I did wonderful. Like, I got a job, I kept a job. Here when we were in Clovis, then my dad passed, and my oldest daughter and I's dad got back together, and we moved to Friona where my sister is. My brother-in-law helped him get a job there, and I went to work at the nursing home, and I was doing good. And then he even left us, and I was I can't say I was doing good because he was abusing me. And he made me feel really bad about myself. But once he was gone, I even packed his stuff for him. And that was the first time that I had the guts to be like, I'm done. You know what I mean? Every other time somebody had left me and this, I was like, I'm done. Of course, he had abused me. He had cheated on me. He emotionally abused me physically, said any kind of abuse you can think of, that man did. He was pretty bad. So when he was gone, I was glad for him to be gone. I was sad for my daughter because he didn't abuse her, but you get the idea. And I felt good about myself. I kept working really hard. I was pulling doubles at work and I didn't have to have any assistance. But I didn't get much time with Rihanna, but I didn't have to have any assistance. I could take care of me and Rihanna just fine. And then I went and I got a job where my brother-in-law worked because Rihanna's dad got fired for fighting. No big surprise. And he was like, you want to come work here because it's more money than what you're making and you won't have to be pulling doubles to take care of you and Rihanna. And I was like, well, heck yeah. And so I went there and I scanned boxes of meat, the weights, so that, because trucks can't be overloaded. So we knew how much was going on the truck. And so that's what I did. And I liked working there. But I convinced myself, I guess, that I thought somebody was here, that I was lonely. And I met my twin's dad. I had dated some after Rihanna's dad left, but I met the twins' dad, and I thought, oh, he can just be I'm going to say it, a booty call, y'all. Okay? That's all it was supposed to be. And that's really all it was. And it happened a few times, and the last time it happened, I got pregnant. But before I ever found out I was pregnant, he had disappeared. He had done a disappearing act. I knew his mom. I knew him from work, but he had not lived there in Friona all that time. But he went to go live with his mom. That's a whole long story of him that maybe I'll get into someday. But I did know his mom very well, and his mom is a wonderful woman. Okay, she is. So then I found out I was pregnant, and yeah, I can't say I was happy because it was not I didn't know him that well. He was just a hookup, that's it. And I was like, oh, wow. And I had started going to church. I was really into church, and I had found God again, and I was working, and I was doing so good, and I find out I'm pregnant, and I'm like, oh no. And then I found out there was two of them. Okay, so I kept getting calls, hang-ups. I'm making this way longer than it needs to be, but so anyway, I was pregnant with the twins. Once I had them, I went into I had really bad postpartum, and I went into a bipolar spiral, I guess. And I went all the stuff, the mood swings came back, but my depression was worse than it had ever been. It was bad. And so I got back into, I ended up with a case manager in the town I was living in, okay? She lived there. She took us to see the psychiatrist when we needed to. We could get our meds, but there was no counseling. Our case manager came and talked to us and stuff, but there was no actual in-depth counseling. She was not educated for that. She was just our case manager. She checked up on us. She knew about mental health, but not enough to be a therapist. And it wasn't offered to us. Like, we had to go pay money to be able to do therapy. And I didn't have it. I wasn't able to work. I was living on assistance, and I couldn't afford it. I did get my meds for free. That's a blessing, yes. And I got to see the psychiatrist for free. But like I said, there was no counseling. And I ended up in 3 mental institutions. Okay. The first one, I was just really depressed. It was around Christmas time, and some things happened, and it put me in a really low place. And I ended up and honestly, I think it was just a lot having 2 babies and a toddler. And Rana was always a very energetic, I don't want to say difficult. She was just always very headstrong. And I was depressed, and I can't even really remember. I just remember feeling hopeless. So I go to this. It was like a vacation for a week. It was a bunch of old ladies, and it was calm, and I colored, and I read books, and I hadn't read in forever. And I left there, and I felt, a little better because I got rest. I actually got to sleep because Rana never slept. Even as a 4 or 5 year old, she never slept. And then there's 2 babies, and so I actually got to sleep and read books, and so then comes the next time. And I had plans of hurting myself, and somebody had found a note I wrote, and the only reason that I didn't do it was because no one would watch the kids. And I was one of these people that decided if I was ever going to do it, I wasn't going to do it where anyone that I love could find me. And I loved my children enough that I wouldn't leave them alone in the apartment. And you might think, well, you should have loved them enough to not want to do it. But my brain wasn't working that way. My brain was telling me that I was better off gone. Everybody would be better off if I was gone. My kids would be better off. My mom, I was too much of a burden is how I felt. Okay, so that was the second time. Then the third time that came about because of something really bad that happened. And that's not just my story to tell, so I won't tell it, but let's just say I was in a really bad relationship, and bad things happened. And my plans were to kill myself after I killed this other person. Like, Okay. And, or it's a long story, and maybe I'll get into a little more detail someday. But so I'd cut my arms all up. And my caseworker showed up, and she should have known something was weird because this was after my cousin had committed suicide. And it was August and or end of July, beginning of August, and I was wearing long sleeve sweatshirts because I knew if she saw the cuts that I was going to go to a hospital. Okay. And the only hospital that was going to take me was going to be the state hospital. And I had heard nightmare stories. And I wasn't sure didn't still want to do it. The cutting, the knife wasn't sharp enough, but I actually do not think that I am condoning cutting because I'm not. But it gave me some kind of adrenaline rush that after I did it, I felt better. So I kept doing it. So I literally cut from my wrist all the way up. I started with this and it felt good. And so then I'm sorry if that was kind of graphic and you didn't want to hear that, but that is the honest truth. So I had cuts all the way up my arm. And I always knew when she was coming, we had our scheduled day. So I knew to wear, well, one day she got suspicious. And so one day she shows up and I don't have my sweatshirt on. I have a t-shirt on and I just answered the door. Now my kids were staying with my mom because I had really lost my mind a little. And you cannot be just put in a mental hospital for not doing well. Like they have to really believe that you are a you're going to harm yourself or someone else. You're a danger to yourself or someone else. Okay. And so my kids had gone to stay with my mom. I was by myself and my caseworker just shows up out of nowhere. Well, I don't think it's her because there was never any unscheduled visits at that time. And she shows up and I open the door and here I've got cuts that are healing. They're not healed yet. And even if they were, they'd still be there. So yeah. And she just shook her head and she goes, "That's what I thought. And I'm sorry, Neva, but I'm going to have to send you to the hospital and you know it's going to be the state hospital." I was like, "Please don't send me. I'll do whatever you want me to. Don't send me." I don't really know if it was so much I didn't want to go to that hospital, even though I'd heard bad stories, or that I just really didn't. I knew that it would be a lot harder to hurt myself in there. That's the truth. So they sent me. The city police wouldn't take me, even though that's their job. They would not take me. So I had to wait for a sheriff to finish a 12-hour shift he had to pull to drive me 4 hours. So I got there in the middle of the night. And needless to say, I'd never been in jail or prison, and a lot of those people came from jail or prison or were headed to jail or prison. And I'm not saying that mean about them. They were mentally unstable. A lot of things they'd been there for. You know, it was because of their mental illness. Okay. So I'm not saying that in a judgy way. I'm just saying I had never been in those circumstances. And so here I am. I am scared to death. There's a woman up there at the desk when I get there talking about killing all the white and the Hispanic people. And she's like over 6 foot tall. And I'm like, "I'm going to die." And the sheriff is like literally holding my hand. He goes, "It's going to be okay." And the whole way there, of course, he's telling me, "You're such a beautiful woman and you have beautiful kids. Why would you want to?" And he knew the circumstances, but he still talked to me. And he was a nice man, and I wish I could remember his name. But he grabbed my hand and he said, "You're going to be okay." And I was like, "No, I'm not. This is not good." I was in that hospital, and someday we'll talk specifically about the things I heard and saw there. I got counseling in that. I had a lot of classes to go to. One of them was grieving, because I was grieving a trauma that had happened to me. It's a whole complicated thing. So when I got out of there, I knew I couldn't stay in that town. For one, people were judging me. I just couldn't stay there. And I knew here in Clovis that I could get counseling. Even if I didn't have money, if I was on assistance, they would only charge me $5. If you're poverty or lower, which means no income, $5. And my mom could afford to help me with that if I didn't have it. And so I went to counseling. Okay. All those trips, I got counseling while I was there, but not intense counseling except for the last hospital. And then I didn't have counseling when I got out. And honestly, I was there for a month. That last one, I needed counseling when I got out. So me and my kids moved here. We all went into counseling. And I had to change counselors a few times to get the right one. But I've now seen the one I see now for 6 years. I have come such a long way. And so do not be ashamed to go to therapy. Do not be ashamed to ask for help, because I am proof that if you find the right therapist, and I'm not saying that those therapists weren't good over here that I saw before, but they weren't the right fit for me. So don't be afraid to do therapy, and don't be afraid. The sad thing is our mental health system is broken. It should be a very big priority on helping on insurances and everything else, because if we're not well mentally, we are not well physically, or we won't be. And sometimes physical illness leads to mental illness. So mental illness should be a big thing when it comes to insurances, but unfortunately it's not. Okay. So if you can't afford it, I'm not saying anything, but if you can, if your insurance helps you, I'm telling you, some people don't do it out of shame. Don't stay away from therapy. If you can get help, get it, because I'm way better than I was. I still need my therapy. I can't wait till I can go back into the office. Every time they're going to open up the offices, someone else comes down with the C word or something happens and they can't open it back up. But when they do, I can start back to my EMDR, and I wish I could tell you what the letters stand for, but I can't remember. But it deals with PTSD. Since being hospitalized that first time, I've been diagnosed with bipolar, PTSD, major depressive disorder, and a little bit of a personality disorder. And there's probably some things I have they haven't even learned about yet. Who knows? But yeah, I have not tried to commit suicide again. And I honestly, when I got out of the hospital, had plans of loving on my kids and then ending it. And I realized how much I missed them and that they missed me. And then I realized I couldn't. So I highly recommend going to therapy. Medication is not all of it. And I don't think that medication is the end all to everything. You really need the counseling too. It's a combination. Now, if you can only get medication, then by all means take your medication. But if you can't get therapy, find a friend. I have an email, y'all, that you can just vent it to at least. And I don't mind people just venting to me. Not by no means do I mind that. I don't. Because my mom was my sounding board. I didn't want her to fix it. There was no fixing to what was wrong at the time. But I would get so frustrated with things, more frustrated than other people would. Just letting it out and telling her how I felt made it a little better. It didn't make it go away, but I felt a little better about the situation. So if you can't get therapy, your insurance doesn't pay for it, it's not accessible to you, whatever it is, then find somebody. I will put my email in the description box. I forget most times, but I will put it in the description box so that if you ever want to vent to me, if you ever want to say Neva, and as scary as I told you that mental institution was, don't ever be afraid to go if someone tells you need to go, because yes, it was a scary situation, but I got more help at that one than I did the other two. The other two were a piece of cake. They were not scary at all, but you know what? They didn't help me. All I had to do was pretend I was happy and everything was better, and they let me go home. And this hospital didn't fall for it. So sometimes scary is better. I'm just saying. And I mean, I'm sure plenty of cancer patients are really scared to go and have surgery or go for treatments when they first go. But there are cancer survivors because of it. So look at it that way. It might be a bad situation that you don't want to go into, but if you come out of it mentally even a little bit better, it was worth it. So today's was about, please don't be afraid to get therapy if it's accessible to you. Please don't be afraid if you end up needing to go to a hospital. If you are having bad thoughts of not wanting to be here anymore, please reach out to somebody. If you have harmed yourself, cutting is not okay. If you're doing that to get by, then you need to talk to somebody and tell somebody, and you need to go to a hospital where they can get you on medication and kind of get you straightened out. Do not be afraid of getting help for a mental illness. Okay? I think I'm going to end it now because talking about that, I get very emotional. Plus, my camera tells me it's almost 30 minutes. Sorry, guys. I hope this helped somebody. I will put my email in the description box. So if you ever need to reach out, I'm not a professional, but I have been down a lot of mental health roads with people I love and with myself. And I have suffered the loss of someone that committed suicide. My cousin did. And it's something that haunts me to this day. And I know my aunt never, ever got over feeling like it was partly her fault. So I hope this was helpful to somebody. I love you. And leave comments below, and I will try to do telling my truth, which this might as well have been one, but I will still do a telling my truth. Okay, I love y'all.